most important people in your organization when implementing change is your frontline employees. And I want to say that again, right? Is the most important people in your organization when implementing a new process is your frontline employees. And the reason why is that is your biggest source of data, right? They're the ones implementing it. If they hit a roadblock, we should be able to document that, right? We need that information then, right? We don't need that information at some town hall 6 months from now on why they couldn't implement that change. We have to increase that communication within the process, right? And also we're looking to reduce things. So as we look at process improvement, you shouldn't have the same document in every single thing, right? Or things like that. Or like that project that I mentioned at the VA to where we just took out one sheet of paper, right? Just that reduction saved all kinds of money. So now let's talk a little bit about change management. And here, change management, and then they said provide a safe space to communicate that information and feedback. Absolutely. Safe space, right? Keep it short, sweet, simple, but also provide consequences, right? I think that's where a lot of times people miss it, especially when providing and communicating feedback, which we'll talk a lot about in another model. But it really is, right? You have to create that space and you have to be that leader that can contain that space and create that container to have that conversation. But really, whenever we talk about change management, right, phase one is really gathering our comms. We're gathering our data on how we're going to approach this change, and we're going to build a change capability statement or whatever we want to create that kind of says, this is where we're at in this change process, and this is where we need to head. And then we're going to start engaging employees. We want to engage them in so many different ways. We're going to have our stakeholder analysis. We're going to have, different processes that we're going to look at. And then we're going to develop a plan forward, and we're going to train everybody in this new process. And our big main thing to think about is how do we move people from knowledge to ability? Whenever we look at those habits that we talked about earlier, and we talked about how hard change is, how are we going to build in that 8 months for somebody to learn how to ride a new bike? How are we going to build that in? Because that was their individual change process, whereas somebody else might only take a month for that individual change process, right? How are we going to build in that flexibility? How are we going to know whenever people achieve, full adoption?